So I do not like neocons, and we're going to get into that today. I'm going to start with I mentioned pre-interview here that I'm embedded in Republican politics. Republicans all over the place like to put Abraham Lincoln on a pedestal. In fact, I asked a couple of 16-year-olds, 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, everyone. He got rid of slavery. He's the emancipator. They put him on this pedestal, and the Civil War was all about slavery. Can you give us a little bit of the real truth?
That's sort of the fairy tale version, and that's such a good story, and it justifies the northern invasion of the South. It gives it a moral cause because, of course, slavery is horrible. But Thomas Jefferson freed more slaves than Lincoln. Uh, Lincoln didn't free any slaves other than around Washington D.C., but he also paid the masters $300 per head, and he offered the blacks $100 if they'd leave the United States. The Emancipation Proclamation did not free any slaves, and the 13th Amendment was passed after Lincoln was dead. They did not invade the South to free the slaves, evidenced by the fact that 6 of the northern states also had slaves and continued to have slaves after Lincoln was dead and after the war was over. It was the 13th Amendment that freed slaves.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk on one of your podcasts about, and I haven't been able to dig into this one yet, but how Lincoln ushered in the beginning of the oligarchy, the downfall of the U.S. How so?
Well, I want to point out too, like West Virginia seceded from Virginia and stayed in the Union and kept its slaves. That wasn't an issue. And there was the Corbin Amendment also that where Lincoln offered, but it was authored by 2 Yankees, one from Ohio, one from New York in Congress. And Lincoln personally wrote the governors of each southern state to ratify this amendment to the Constitution, which would have enshrined slavery in the Constitution, protected all labor laws, and they rejected it and seceded anyway because that was never the primary reason for secession. It was the tariff issue. Yeah, Lincoln's the original neocon. If you care about free speech, the Lincoln's who killed it in the United States. Lincoln arrested over and closed down 300 newspapers. He arrested a mayor of Baltimore. He got rid of the Constitution completely. Thousands of people were thrown in jail, no trial, no habeas corpus, nothing. Um, and after the war, because he had closed down all the papers that weren't favorable to the government, they could never really catch up. Um, the state-run papers had such a head start that they dominated, and this is where the news just becomes there was no free market competition anymore. The news was just whatever, all state propaganda. He started the income tax as well. A lot of people think that, oh, that's 1913, Jekyll Island, Aldrich's Bill. Mm-mm. It was Lincoln. Lincoln started the income tax. I know there's some films out there that'll say, well, didn't he have the greenbacks to challenge the Fed? Fed didn't even exist. He had greenbacks that failed. The greenback was worth about 35 cents compared to a whole dollar by the duration of the war. He paid for the war by selling war bonds, and he sold them to Rothschilds. And those war bonds were repaid in gold stolen from the South after the war.